here's the deal. Jake Paul outpoints Mike Tyson in this largely pointless 8-round exhibition, or pro wrestling, if you will, despite Mike Tyson having pushed for this to be a sanctioned bout. So, Luke, it broke records on Netflix. We'll get into all that. But while it might seem easy for everyone out there to be like, what the hell were you guys expecting with a 58-year-old? How much of a stain do you think this is, if any, to boxing, considering that 65 million households globally watched this fight live, and this turned out to be nothing more than scripted entertainment between good friends? And I'm standing on that after what we saw. Is this a major FU to boxing now that you got all these casuals tuned into your sport? What say you on this?
I don't think it's bad for boxing in any kind of meaningful sense. Right? It's not like you had the results that we had, and then people were like, you know what, I was going to give boxing a chance, but now I'm just not. I just doesn't, like, I was going to watch Zurdo Ramirez at the Latino card in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, but you know what? Fuck you guys. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
I will say, if you wanted to argue that if the fight had been great, in whatever version that would have meant, could that have gotten people converted? Even then, I'm somewhat skeptical of that, but sure, that would have been a lot nicer. I would have been happier to talk about that, but I don't think boxing suffers other than to say, did they miss an opportunity, or what was an opportunity missed, I should say, to potentially turn people into more dedicated fans? You could make that argument. However, the co-main event was fucking awesome.
And 50 million people were watching that.
No, that's not right.
50 million households.
Households.
Not mine, because half of that fight was frozen. Thank you, Netflix. I had to take, but to be honest, I was doing a live blog for CBS. I had to watch most of that night on an illegal stream because it was the only stream that would hold.
Right. I had to watch an illegal stream at times. Netflix fucked that up. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I will say that I don't look at it in these existential terms. But I think for me, I did have a couple of takeaways, BC.
I hope they all involve stains, because this is bullshit, dude.
First of all, dude, I have seen all of Jake Paul's fights, and I've been to many of them. Jake Paul's fights are fucking boring. They're fucking boring. The first Woodley fight was okay-ish. The second fight was terrible until that late knockout. The Fury fight sucked. The Silva fight was...
Fury fight was at least tense and competitive.
Competitive. I didn't say it was good. You can have competitive and not be all that good. The Mike Perry fight was a demolition. So
Nate and Anderson Silva were kind of the same. Were okay, right?
They were fine. They weren't... Okay, what's your favorite highlight reel? Like, one time he knocked Diaz down in round 5, or the one time he knocked Silva down? Like, beyond that, show me your... Dude, I can think of a million Bam Rodriguez highlights that have nothing to do with knocking anybody down, although there's some of those too. This is my point. Like, there's nothing to these.
Yes.
Here's what got me, and we'll talk about this, I think, in a little more detail, but I want to introduce it to the conversation. After the fight is over, my first read was like, Jake Paul sucks so bad, he couldn't even finish a 58-year-old guy. Not that he couldn't do it, but I don't think he wanted to get hit trying and to look bad trying, and so therefore he kind of pumped the brakes. You could make that argument, or you could make the argument that he just had mercy on the guy and he didn't want to finish him off. Either way, in the post-fight press conference, he basically admits to, like, carrying the guy,
God.
which is so fucking bad. You can carry a guy when they're too tough for their own good, but as Stephen Bretman Edwards pointed out, if you're going to carry a guy, the point is to preserve their dignity.
Yes.
You betray that by mentioning that the post-fight press conference. But more to the point is there's a more sinister thing going on here. Jake Paul is not good at boxing. He's better than, obviously celebrities, but he's not good. So a lot of what he does is fucking sandbagging, okay? And people were bitter at me when I was like, dude, finish fucking Mike off. They're like, he's 58. I'm like, guys, stop this. Stop this now.
Please stop this.
You cannot sandbag and then at the other end simultaneously say, I didn't want to do anything because I have mercy on him.
I'm going to fuck him up, Ariel.
Yeah, hold on.
I'm going to fuck him up, Ariel.
Irrespective of the fact that you're just betraying the dignity you were trying to preserve, independent of that, when you say it's okay for Jake Paul to do that, you are saying you don't have to do and deliver on anything. You don't have to try. You don't have to entertain. You don't have to do fuck all. You can make the fight against the worst possible opponent and do nothing in the fight, and we'll say, well, you know what? He showed class to preserve Mike's...
he showed his ass.
I'm like, shut the fuck up. Do not absolve somebody who is fucking sandbagging in front of you. Either
And
stretch,
then admits it afterwards.
yeah, either stretch this fucking guy, or better, don't make fights like fucking this.
Like they had a small strike zone where they were going to make this super entertaining or make it worth its while of hype. We get that. We were in on that coming in. We all took the risk of what this could be because our interest levels were just so high, whether it was in the worst kind of like ridiculous way possible or not, or the nostalgic way. We got caught up in that too. But I don't want to hear another person say, what did you expect with a 58-year-old? Guys,
Stretch him.
do you know what I expected? Professional boxing match. Not a high-level professional boxing match, not a back-and-forth competitive one. I expected a boxing match where there was going to be a winner and a loser, and both were going to try. And I expected Mike to get stretched, right? I expect him to be dangerous for a round, maybe a round and a half, and then it would catch up with him and he'd get stopped. And it looked like it was heading that way in round 3. Instead, what we got would have been worse, is actually in a lot of ways, my opinion, worse than had Mike taken the beating and got knocked out, which we wouldn't want for him, but he signed up for this, and so did we, by the way, right? So what we got was pro wrestling. What we got was not a fight. It was awful. And even there was a short period of what you thought you were guaranteed to get, which is Mike emptying the tank in the first 30 seconds and at least, seeing how Jake dealt with that. Both just left open periods where they could have punched and did nothing, as if they're protecting one another. And then, obviously after Jake hurt him in round 3, could have finished him off with a hard jab probably, but carried him the distance. You can't do the I'm going to fuck him up aerial routine and the slap and all that on Thursday and then do this pro wrestling bullshit here. So what did I expect? A fight, because it was Mike Tyson who pushed for this to be a fight. So whatever it was going to be, as bad or as gross or as sloppy, we accepted that. We were going to judge it for its entertainment value and the time we took to preview this and get, and get ready for it. But they're showing us that it was pro wrestling in the end, and Jake carried him. And yet some people out here are still saying, I can't believe Jake couldn't knock out Mike. Like, it wasn't a fight. It was what Mike did in 2006 that people luckily forget about, when he did that pay-per-view sparring match with Corey Sanders, who was wearing a t-shirt, by the way. And it was so poorly received that they had to cancel the rest of the pay-per-view tour. And then they basically were going to put Mike in Vegas and just have him be an attraction training in there where people would pay money to see it. It was like that sad. This was worse than that because of how many people they grabbed, stopped. I know you didn't have to pay the pay-per-view. I know that. And that's a bonus in this case. And the co-main event was unbelievable and should have led our show, to be fair with you. But when you get this many people's attention, you're entitled to attempt to entertain them in what you're promised that you're selling. Because there's a thin line here. There's always a thin line of combat sports between playing up the pro wrestling side of the promotion and, we'll let you do that. Who knows if Mike Tyson was really mad when Jake stepped on his foot and slept. We were all like, whatever. It produced a moment. We talked about it. It got us to care a little bit more. But that wasn't a fight in there. And when the casuals, who probably only last came for Mayweather McGregor, you know what I mean? Or Mayweather Pacquiao, and get upset all the time because they feel this sport is fixed and no one wants to fight each other and all that stuff. Well, what did we give them, Luke? We gave them no reason to watch boxing. And to be fair for Jake here, I think the bubbles burst on the Jake Paul experience. Luke, you nailed it. Like, they jumped the shark right here. We always thought it was going to be a loss for Jake that would end this. Like, what if somebody knocked him out? Well, that's the end of this crossover bubble. And to Jake's credit, as a master marketer, he's kept this bubble alive and it's been the face of it. But Luke, how does the bubble go on from here on out? I know that's not our first point of emphasis to care, but I think Jake not only gave boxing the middle finger here, he kind of gave any respect people have for his own career, not based on that you took a fight against a 58-year-old, but that it wasn't even a fight in the end. And then you admit afterwards that you carried him and none of the punches hurt at all. It's like, then why the fuck did any of us care about this to begin with? Yeah. I accepted the potential slop that it was going to be, but at least be what you're selling.
It's hard to say after this. I don't know how what he does can be bigger than what this was. Now, this was stupid as hell, but in terms of its size and its scope, which really, I mean, if you think about it, BC, like what does a great career in boxing look like? It looks like, to the extent possible, the maximum amount of legitimacy markers you could get, a world title, gold medal, whatever, You want to make a lot of money, right? And you want to take as little damage as possible. He gave up the legitimacy part, but he was able to speed run the money, and he was able to speed run taking no damage. It's incredible, right? But of course, that messes up the equation, because when you can speed run the other ones, you're making a trade-off in something that actually is not good for any of us. So here's what I'm going to say. I don't know that it's wise to say the bubble has popped, but I am going to say two things. One, as I just indicated, I don't know where they go from here to get a bigger event than this was.
Right.
I just don't know how you do it. And second of all, there has to be some kind of recognition that, like, there's no there. Not every fight has to be great. Not every fight has to be fun. Not every fight has to be the most important one. But when none of them are important, the expectation for some kind of deliverable to the consumer is heightened. It is magnified. And if you don't deliver on that, what the fuck is the point? If the fight between Jake and Mike Tyson means nothing, because it doesn't, there's no ranking, there's no world title, it's not for anything in a division, it's just for fun. Okay, but it wasn't that either. Well, then what was it? It was an act of nothingness. So my point is, I don't think it's wise to throw the baby out with the bathwater here as well and say, well, there's nothing that he can do anymore. With a match made against an opponent that the public believes would reasonably force him into some kind of action or would be some kind of threat in a real way.
So couldn't it be a Tommy Fury rematch? It'd have to almost at this point be a real
something
fighter.
like that. Something like
Chavez
that.
Jr., or is that even too sloppy?
I don't know about the Chavez Jr. one, because he already lost to Anderson Silva.
I'm not saying it's shut down, but I'm saying, like, whatever certain percentage of the real boxing public or combat sports media and fan public that cared about him under the guise that he's not for real, but he's trying to get pretty close to it, and he keeps talking about that payoff of fighting for a world title or fighting Canelo. Like, we kind of pretended to care still in this universe, especially when he's fighting, big name ex boxers and MMA guys, and it's suddenly a thing again. I just meant, like, jumping the shark and popping the balloon from the standpoint of, like, why should we ever care again? Because who's next? Andrew Tate,
yeah.
Carl Froch is embarrassing himself, throwing himself at him. Artur Beterbiev put out a tweet.
I know. Again, the commercial appeal is significant. And if you're Artur Beterbiev, can you imagine fighting, dude, Beterbiev versus Jake Paul would be legalized murder.
That's not even on the table. But Jake wasn't even going after Canelo, if you saw afterwards. He wasn't aggressively like he was in the past.
This is my point. It's like, I just need folks to realize on some level, Jake, you have to, like, just take a second. I'm going to say things that sound obvious, but take a second. He's not good at boxing. He has limited skills to produce the kind of action or to guide a bout in a way that elite pros do, because he simply doesn't have the ability. If he is hampered by that, and he is hampered by the ethical concerns of the very fight that he booked, remember, he's the fighter and the promoter. If he's got ethical concerns about the fight he booked and he's not that good at meaningfully moving the fight forward, what the fuck is the appeal to the customer? What is it?
That's why I think this is such a bad stain. I'm not going to do the whole it's such a bad stain on boxing. I don't think it's good for boxing at all, but I just think it's a bad stain on Jake, because Jake then admits I carried him, even though there's people that can we play the Dana sound? There's people that legitimately believe, like, Jake is.
I think he pumped the brakes for more reasons than just mercy. I do believe that.
Well, image too. He didn't.
Yes.
And also, I think they're friends, and he wanted to help Mike out. But
maybe that too.
Let's play the Dana sound, please.
But he basically said, I told him, Mike, you're basically 60 years old, and he's like, you honestly think this fucking kid's gonna do anything to me? He's not good. He's not gonna fucking knock me out. He's not gonna do this. And you saw him. He tripped when he was walking down the thing. He had a hard time walking up the stairs. He had a knee brace on. And Jake Paul couldn't do anything to him. He made a ton of money. And I know people are mad. You stayed home on a Saturday night, but you didn't pay for it. You know what I mean? And, this is what Mike Tyson, when Mike Tyson shows up, everybody makes money. Jake Paul is, I don't have to tell you guys. You guys know. Mike Tyson is the A+++ side of that thing. And he was right. Jake Paul couldn't do shit to him. He was right and I was wrong.
I mean, John Jones would almost say the same thing too afterwards. Like, they were like more ragging on Jake for not being able to hurt him or finish him. Neither of these guys went for it, Luke. Why are people not seeing this?
Yeah,
Like,
well, but whether it's a function of ability or mercy, it almost doesn't even matter.
but wouldn't it be really bad if Jake had a failure to launch out of fear or just didn't want the stain of getting caught by something from Mike?
Yes, that would be equally bad. But this is my point. It's like either way, dude, if these are the conditions
Yeah.
that you as a fighter and promoter have put yourself into, you don't get to after the bout be like, but I was trying to do X, Y, and Z.
Well, it's
or
like,
you,
and anyone like, did I want to see Mike get hurt? No. But then when Mike puts out that tweet afterwards,
I
which
wouldn't
was
mind
his way of sort of like, telling us why it was all worth it to him and that this is, such a big moral victory. And to some degree, for him to get the shape that he's in and for him to command this much attention, like it is a win for Mike to some degree, except for the fight and how some of us are talking about it. But like, which direction was I going with it? Oh, wait. What am I teeing up here? I just lost track of where I was in my head. Yeah, I just lost.
It was a waste of time. It was a
What
waste.
the hell was
Dude, boxing is fucking. People are like, "What'd you want? You wanted to knock out Mike?" It's like, again, if you weren't willing to do it, then don't put him in the bout. But boxing is dangerous.
Oh no,
Boxing is
sorry.
dangerous.
The tweet Mike was saying. So
Yeah.
that's the whole point of this is Mike basically said that when he had that medical emergency on the airplane, he's saying that he lost 26 pounds, needed 6 IV transfusions,
Blood transfusions.
blood transfusions, excuse me, to survive, and almost died. Like this 100,000% should not have been sanctioned as a real fight.
No.
And
should not
if
have been
it
sanctioned.
had played out what I'm complaining that it didn't, Mike would have been in serious trouble here, right?
He could have been. This is my point. If you can't have an opponent, like, what the fuck is the point of having a commission if a guy in this kind of medical condition can get a license, even with amended rule sets? He should have never have been in that ring.
And wouldn't you say,
never?
Mike tweeting that mixed with Jake admitting that he carried him and that this was a farce, aren't they just showing everybody what this was?
Yeah,
Like
they just jacked off in everyone's faces. Yeah, and in Mike Tyson's case, showing us his ass.
Well, let's see it. Let's see it.
What's your prediction?
Vicious win.
Vicious win. Thank you, Dad.
Love you.
Love you too.
Look at that ass.
What are we doing here? I mean, it was one of the great crazy moments. It was during a time when my screen was frozen and I couldn't figure out how to hit play,
There's
so
two
I
butt
missed it
cheeks right there in
live.
your face.
So I didn't get to see one of the greatest moments in TV history live, but
Yeah.
thank you, Mike. What a moment. Let's hear.
King butt cheeks over there.
I mean, this next quote from Jake just makes me mad too. Let's hear from Jake.
Trevonta Davis just posted that he would beat the brakes off of you if you guys fight.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be down. Let's run it. Like, I'll be super, super down. I don't know if
Javante needs Jake Paul. Let's be clear, right?
is there a height limit in boxing?
What about you and Conor McGregor? Are you interested in that?
Yeah, he'll never do that though. He knows. He knows way, way, way.
Yeah, let's wrap up that talk. There are a lot of people calling him out. Dude, I don't want to see Carl or even Andre Ward showing that he's interested in this.
Anybody who's a legitimate threat to stretch him, I'll watch that.
Okay, but like, would that fight? Let's say it was Andre Ward or Carl Froch. Would that be well received because it's at least in theory leveling the playing field?
I don't know.
I don't know what
I don't know what state.
I don't know what
Andre looks like he's in good shape still.
40. Yeah,
He's also our boss. Let's be very careful about that. But he was on the desk and he looked to be reasonably spry.
And he was telling the truth about Jake.
He was.
Give him
He was. And
respect.
Carl Froch is in his own way kind of telling the dude.
Froch is calling out Jake's lady though. He's like going for it.
Okay, that's a
which is
little much.
getting
But the point I'm
aggressive.
trying to make is, going after this event, you cannot do in terms of its success as a financial result or even a pop culture moment. It was enormous and I'll say this, BC, it was very successfully promoted. Super, super well promoted. But there is nothing to the Jake Paul experience.
And they showed it to us.
In the end,
they showed us the guy behind the curtain.
In the end, it is completely devoid of like what makes boxing great. You could make a list of things. He takes all of those things out and then asks you to still watch. Go fuck yourself. I don't want to watch that.
Yeah, and
Put
I
some
don't wanna
danger
watch
back in
him
there.
fight Andrew
Put some
Tate, please.
suspense. Put some mystery back in there. Put some difficulty. Put some competition back in there, and I'll watch.
That's what I'm saying. He sold his own soul for this fight.
Yeah.
Everyone did, and I guess we're all lucky. Maybe I should change my analysis that Mike didn't get laid out in that regard.